Hello everyone, I'm Leroy Harris, Programming Librarian here at the New Ulm Public Library, and I'm very happy to welcome you back to our second annual Stories for the Season. This year we've done a great collaboration together with the State Street Theater, NUCAT, and we're very excited to have the Brown County Historical Society joining us this year to provide us with our reading material. All of the readings that you'll be hearing come from the Brown County Historical Archives. And so they'll include letters, personal remembrances, newspaper clippings, as well as some fun recipes. We hope you enjoy these stories for the season.
Hello, holiday greetings. My name is Sandra Uni, and I'm the Executive Director at the State Street Theater Company. And welcome to another version of Stories for the Seasons. The story I'm going to be reading for you today is called That Wonderful Time of the Year, and it's a beautiful memoir of a woman by the name of Mary Schaff. And it brings back wonderful imagery that brings us back to the days of New Ulm when things were a little simpler and life was just a little bit easier. So let's begin that wonderful time of the year. As I sit in my cozy home and look out at the gentle December snow falling, I watch the landscape being transformed into an updated version of a Currier and Ives painting. I watch the snowflakes drift slowly to the earth, and my thoughts also drift back to the holiday seasons over 60 years ago in New Ulm, Minnesota. I loved those winter holidays more than any other holidays during the year. On Thanksgiving, the first of the Big Three holidays, all six of us rode the short distance to Uncle Alfred's house for that most unforgettable meal. Inside Ma's home place, the smell of cooking goose gave us an appetite we thought would never be satisfied. But as good as that meal was, and the pleasant conversation that followed, it was all just a warm-up for what lay ahead that evening. After supper, Daddy would tell my brothers, my sister, and me to get ready and dress warmly. Then we drove uptown to see the Christmas decorations on Minnesota Street. Huge pine garlands adorned with red, blue, and green lights were draped across the street, and in the lights, they were lit for the first time on Thanksgiving night. The decorations remained the same year after year, but we never tired of them. Each year, it was as if we were seeing them for the first time. It was the perfect end to a perfect day. Now we were ready to get down to the business of Christmas. The Christmas catalog had just arrived, and it was difficult to choose just the right toy. Ma had an uncanny knack for being able to shift our attention to toys that were within their price range. I never realized how clever this mother of ours was until much later. Of course, price was never a factor to us because we knew that Santa brought the toys. I could never figure out why there were prices next to the toys when they were all free. There were no early decorations put up at our house in those days, but that didn't matter to us because we could go uptown and see enough decorations to sustain us until Christmas Eve. My favorite window decoration was up the street at Musing Drugstore. Animated figures were almost unheard of in those days, so I was fascinated as I watched a doll dressed in a cranberry red gown play carols on a little pipe organ, her hands moving up and down the keyboard. The music was piped outdoors, so we could stand outside that artificially snow-covered window and enjoy it. When we finally needed to get in out of the cold, we'd head for the dime store to fulfill our reason for being uptown in the first place. We had to do our Christmas shopping. We had saved our pennies since summer, and we only had enough money to buy something inexpensive. But that never mattered to Ma or Daddy. I guess it gave meaning to the saying, it's the thought that counts. Daddy's gift was never a problem. It was the same each year. We'd bound into Hans Schneider's tobacco store and order several white owl signs. Ma's gift took a lot more thought. We'd wander up and down the aisles of the dime store looking for just the right gift. Invariably, we'd end up with hankies. We were proud of our purchase and made our way home to wrap and hide our treasures. While we were in town, we'd walk up and down the toy aisles at Retzlaff's hardware store and make a mental note of what we would ask Santa for when he visited in town in early December. While we were in town, we'd walk up and down the toy aisles. We would anxiously await this visit of St. Nick. To keep us in tow, Ma would threaten us by saying that if we didn't behave, St. Nick would pass by our house. But without fail, on the morning of December 6th, we found 4 little bags sitting in the shanty, each filled with an apple or an orange and some peanuts. We never did receive the dreaded piece of coal. Now it was time for Ma to bake her delicious Christmas cookies. There were several kinds, but the best by far were her sugar cookies. Some were frosted, and some had only colored sugar on them, but all were cut into shapes of Christmas trees, stars, lions, and a few gingerbread men. These were carefully stored in the cellar. Then Ma would shop for the Christmas candy. Haystacks, chocolate stars, creams, hard and filled candies, along with an assortment of nuts. All the bags were also hidden down in the cellar. It didn't take us long to uncover the cache. However, whenever Mama went out somewhere, we'd stage a raid. We were smart enough not to take too much. I'm sure Ma knew what was going on, but she never mentioned it. Christmas time at our parochial school was also full of anticipation. We practiced hymns and carols. The nuns had their own way of keeping our hyperactivity to a minimum. From time to time, Santa paid a visit to the school, roaming the halls and ringing a bell. None of us ever saw him, and I suspect that it was one of the nuns sneaking up and down the halls. But whoever it was, the idea worked. The Friday before vacation, we had our big Christmas party. Then we finally got to see that elusive Santa. We would also stage a short program, which usually included a skit. One of these programs almost resulted in a tragedy. My brother, Benny, was playing the part of Scrooge. He was seated next to a fireplace which had a big clock on top of the mantel, and as the curtain rose, it caught the cover of the fireplace, and the clock came crashing down on Scrooge's head. Thankfully, Benny didn't become the ghost of Christmas past. Only his pride was hurt. After we had all received our bag of candy from Santa, we were dismissed for the holidays. Now we were Ma's problem. Finally, Christmas Eve arrived. Once again, Daddy would pack his little family into the car and take us to Uncle Alfred's home. Much to our surprise, Santa had been there and left gifts for all of us. We were so engrossed in our gifts that we never noticed that Daddy left. Not until years later did we figure out that he had hurried home to help Ma decorate our tree and the house and put our presents under the tree. But we never questioned this ritual. It was all part of the tradition. All too soon, Ma and Daddy both returned to take their brood home. There was still one more tradition to observe, however. Every year, Benny had to sing O Tannenbaum. Much to his dismay, the rest of us snickered because we knew how much he hated to sing in front of everyone. When we got home, we were very surprised to see that while we were gone, Santa had paid a visit to our house too. We oohed and awed at our beautiful tree. It bore only a single strand of 8 lights, but in our children's eyes, they looked like hundreds. The boughs were laden with dozens of colorful old German decorations of every size and shape. There were also 6 decorated anise cookies hanging on the tree. Ma bought these cookies every year. After we spent enough time savoring the aroma of the tree and its decorations, it was time to see if Santa had brought what we had requested. Our gifts from Santa were never wrapped. They were right there in plain sight, ready to be wound up, sat on, played upon, and experimented with. Ah, but there was more! Those beautifully wrapped packages that arrived from Aunts Frances, Barbara, and Katie still had to be opened. Aunt Barbara and Aunt Frances always sent beautiful and practical gifts, such as dresses, slips, mittens, and shirts. The most sought-after gifts, however, were the ones from Aunt Katie. That lady knew what kids liked for Christmas, things totally useless and impractical for a kid growing up in the Depression. Ma couldn't figure out why Aunt Katie would send such worthless things, such as fuzzy white mittens, purses, and cones and brush sets. I can't remember what the boys received, but I'm sure it was something equally useless in the eyes of responsible adults. After all the gifts were opened, we had to carefully fold the wrapping paper. It was saved and would be ironed later to be used again the following year. Nothing was wasted. After the hustle and bustle settled down, we were herded off to bed. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, would begin with Mass and a time to reflect on the true meaning of this wonderful time of the year. It was hard to wake up and twice as hard to leave behind our new treasures as we sat through High Mass, but the sight that greeted us as we entered the church was worth any inconvenience. The Christmas crib was nestled among freshly cut balsams. The aroma spread throughout the church. Trees on each side of the altar were hung with lights of every color. After Mass, we all marched up to the crib single file to see the baby Jesus in the manger. A small offering box sat alongside the crib, and each of us put our pennies into the box. Soon, we were back home to continue where we had left off. That day and every Christmas was spent with just the 6 of us. I can still see Daddy sitting and smiling as he watched us play with those toys that he and Ma had so carefully chosen. As kids do the world over, we did eventually tire of playing with our new toys. Ma took advantage of this short-lived respite, and it was the perfect time to get us to write our thank you notes. None of us enjoyed the task as we pondered over what to say to someone who was twice our age. It took the better part of the day, and that was just what Ma had been hoping for. The peace and quiet were very much appreciated, and although we dreaded this part of the holiday ritual, it taught us valuable lessons that we carried with us throughout our lives. Respect, thankfulness, and responsibility never go out of style. As soon as weather permitted, we went outside to see if that new sled performed as advertised. We had a nice hill to ski and sled on right outside our door. Ma was thrilled to see us wear ourselves out on that hill. We were wet when we came in, but this was one time Ma didn't mind, for we were also very tired. I'm sure this is what a mother's dreams are made of. All too soon, our vacation came to an end. But our beautiful tree would remain up until at least January 6th or longer if it wasn't dropping too many needles. It was a sad day when it finally came down. All the gifts that had remained under the tree to be shown off to company were finally put away. A few nuts remained, and a few Christmas cookies still had to be eaten, but by far and large, Christmas was over for another year. I have gathered a few toys that have survived the years, and I place them under our tree every year. My doll buggy is missing a few hubcaps, and the celluloid windows are broken. My doll's face and legs are cracked from age. My little wooden ironing board looks the best. The years have been good to it. I can still read its price, 49 cents on its bottom. And as I sit and look at those presents, I remember how happy they made one freckled-faced, pigtailed little girl way back then. I still have a few ornaments that hung on our trees in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. They occupy a prominent place on my tree now. If I could have one wish for Christmas, it would be that every child could be as happy as we were in those good old days, when Santa brought us simple but wonderful presents. I know that I never said it often enough, but to Ma and Daddy, I say, thank you. They helped make Christmas a truly wonderful time of the year.